Recording by Dale Grothman. Junior by Robert Abernathy. Junior, bellowed Pater. Junior, squeaked Mater in a quavering echo. Strayed off again, the young idiot. If he's playing in the shallows with this tide going out. Pater let the sentence hang blackly. He leaned upslope as far as he could stretch, angrily scanning the shoreward reaches where the light filtered more brightly down through the murky water, where the sea surface glinted like bits of broken mirror. No sign of Junior. Mater was peering fearfully in the other direction, toward where, as the daylight faded, the slope of the coastal shelf was fast losing itself in green profundity. Out there, out of sight at this hour, the reef that loomed sheltering above them fell away in an abrupt cliffhead, and the abyss began. "Oh, oh!" sobbed Mater. "He's lost! He's swum into the abyss and been eaten by a sea monster!" Her slender stem rippled and swayed on its base, and her delicate crown of pinkish tentacles trailed disheveledly in the pull of the ebb tide. "Pish, my dear," said Pater. "There are no sea monsters. At worst," he consoled her stoutly, "Junior may have been trapped in a tide pool." "Oh, oh!" gulped Mater. "He's been eaten by a land monster!" "There are no land monsters," snorted Pater. He straightened his stalk so abruptly that the stone to which he and Mater were conjugally attached creaked under them. "How often must I assure you, my dear, that we are the highest form of life?" And as for his world and geologic epoch, he was quite right. "Oh, oh!" gulped Mater. Her spouse gave her up. "Junior!" he roared in a voice that loosened the coral above the reef. Round about, the couple's bereavement had begun to attract attention. In the thickening dusk, tentacles paused from winnowing the sea for their masters' suppers. Stalked heads turned curiously here and there in the colony. Not far away, a threesome of maiden aunts, rooted en brosse to a single substantial boulder, twittered condolences and watched Mater avidly. "Discipline," growled Pater. "That's what he needs. Just wait till I—" "Now, dear—" began Mater shakily. "Hi, folks!" piped Junior from overhead. His parents swiveled as if on a single stalk. Their offspring was floating a few fathoms above them, paddling lazily against the ebb. Plainly he had just swum from some crevice in the reef nearby. In one pair of dangling tentacles he absently hugged a roundish stone, worn sensuously smooth by the pounding surf. "Where have you been?" "Nowhere," said Junior innocently. "Just playing hide-and-go-sink with the squids." "With the other polyps," Mater corrected him primly. She detested slang. Pater was eyeing Junior with an ominous calm. "And where," he asked, "did you get that stone?" Junior contracted guiltily. The surf stone slipped from his tentacles and plummeted to the sea floor in a flurry of sand. He edged away, stammering. "Well, I guess maybe I might have gone a little ways toward the beach." "You guess? When I was a polyp," said Pater, "the small fry obeyed their elders, and no guess about it." "Now, dear," said Mater. "No spawn of mine," Pater warmed to his lecture, "is going to flout my words. Junior, come here." Junior paddled cautiously around the home site, just out of tentacle reach. He said in a small voice, "I won't." "Did you hear me?" "Yes," admitted Junior. The neighbors stared. The three maiden aunts clutched one another with muted shrieks, savoring beforehand the language Pater would now use. But Pater said, "Oh," no more. "Now, dear," put in Mater quickly, "we must be patient. You know all children go through larval stages." "When I was a polyp," Pater began rustily. He coughed out an accidentally inhaled crustacean and started over. "No spawn of mine—" Trailing off, he only glared, then roared abruptly, "Sprat!" "I won't," said Junior reflexively, and back-paddled into the coral shadows of the reef. "That wallop," seethed Pater, "wants a good polyping. I mean—" He glowered suspiciously at Mater and the neighbors. "Dear," soothed Mater, "didn't you notice?" "Of course I—" "Notice what?" what Junior was doing, carrying a stone. I don't suppose he understands why, just yet, but—" "A stone? To be sure, a stone. Why, my dear, do you realize what this means?" Pater was once more occupied with improving Mater's mind. It was a long job without foreseeable end, especially since he and his helpmate were both firmly rooted for life to the same tastefully decorated home site, garnished by Pater himself with colored pebbles, shells, urchins, and bits of coral in a rather rococo style that had prevailed during Pater's courting days as a free-swimming polyp. "Intelligence, my dear," pronounced Pater, "is quite incompatible with motility. Just think, how could ideals congeal in a brain scuttling hither and yon, bombarded by ever-changing sense impressions? Look at the lower species which swim about all their life, incapable of taking root or thought. True intelligence, my dear, as distinguished from instinct, of course, presupposes the fixed viewpoint." He paused. Mater muttered, "Yes, dear," as she always did obediently at this point. Junior undulated past, swimming toward the abyss. He moved a bit heavily now. It was growing harder for him to keep his maturely thickening afterbody in a horizontal position. "Just look at the young of our own kind," said Pater. "Scatter-brained larvae, wandering greedily about in search of new stimuli. But, praise be, they mature at last into sensible, sensile adults. While yet the unformed intellect rebels against the end of carefree polyphood. Instinct, the wisdom of nature, instructs them to prepare for the great change." He nodded wisely as Junior came gliding back out of the gloom of deep water. Junior's tentacles clutched an irregular basalt fragment, which he must have picked up down the rubble-strewn slope. As he paddled slowly along the rim of the reef, the adult anthiozoans located directly below looked up and hissed irritable warnings. He was swimming a bit more easily now, and, if Pater had not been a firm believer in instinct, he might have been reminded of the grossly materialistic theory propounded by some iconoclasts, according to which a mature polyp's tendency to grapple objects was merely a matter of taking on ballast. "See," declared Pater triumphantly, "I don't suppose he understands why just yet, but instinct urges him infallibly to assemble the materials for his future home site." Junior let the rock fragment fall and began plucking restlessly at the coral outcropping. "Dear," said Mater, "don't you think you ought to tell him?" "Ahem," said Pater. "The wisdom of instinct." "As you've always said, a polyp needs a parent's guidance," remarked Mater. "Ahem," repeated Pater. He straightened his stalk and bellowed authoritatively, "Junior, come here." The prodigal polyp swung warily close. "Yes, Pater?" "Junior," said his parent solemnly, "now that you're about to grow down, it behooves you to know certain facts." Mater blushed a delicate lavender and turned away on her side of the rock. "Very soon now," said Pater, "you will begin to feel an irresistible urge to sink to the bottom, to take root there in some sheltered location that will be your lifetime site. Perhaps you even have an understanding already with some, charming young polyp of the opposite gender whom you would invite to share your home site. Or, if not, you should take all the more pains to make the site as attractive as possible, in order that such a one may decide to grace it with—" "Aha," said Junior understandingly. "That's what the fellows mean when they say any of 'em'll fall for a few high-class rocks." Pater marshaled his thoughts again. "Well, quite apart from such material considerations as selecting the right rocks, there are certain, matters we do not ordinarily discuss." Mater blushed a more pronounced lavender. The three maiden aunts, rooted to their boulder within easy earshot of Pater's carrying voice, put up a respectable pretense of searching one another for non-existent water fleas. "No doubt," said Pater, "in the course of your harum-scarum adventurings as a normal polyp among polyps, you've noticed the ways in which the lower orders reproduce themselves. The activities of fishes, the crustacea, the marine worms will not have escaped your attention." "Uh-huh," said Junior, treading water. You will have observed that among these there takes place a good deal of maneuvering for position. But among intelligent, firmly rooted beings like ourselves, matters are, of course, on a less crude and direct plane. What among lesser creatures is a question of tactics belongs, for us, to the realm of strategy." Pater's tone grew confiding. "Now, Junior, once you've settled, you'll realize the importance of being easy in your mind about your offspring's parentage. Remember, a niche in brine saves trying. Nothing like choosing your location well in the first place. Study the currents around your prospective site, particularly their direction and force at such critical times as flood tide. Try to make sure that you and your future mate won't be too close down current from anybody else's site, since in a case like that accidents can happen. You understand, Junior?" "Uh-huh," acknowledged Junior. "That's what the fellows mean when they say don't let anybody get the drop on you." "Well," said Pater in flat disapproval. "But it all seems sort of silly," said Junior stubbornly. "I'd rather just keep moving around and not have to do all that figuring. And the ocean's full of things I haven't seen yet. I don't want to grow down." Mater paled with shock. Pater gave his spawn a scalding, scandalized look. "You'll learn. You can't beat biology," he said thickly, creditably keeping his voice down. "Junior, you may go." Junior bobbled off, and Pater admonished Mater sternly. "We must have patience, my dear. All children pass through these larval stages." "Yes, dear," sighed Mater. At long last, Junior seemed to have resigned himself to making the best of it. With considerable exertions, hampered by his increasing body heaviness, he was fetching loads of stones, seaweed, and other debris to a spot downslope, and there labored over what promised to be a fairly ambitious cairn. Judging by what they could see of it, his home site might even prove a credit to the colony, so went Pater's thoughts, and attract a mate who would be a good catch. Thus Mater mused. Junior was still to be seen at times along the reef in the company of his free-swimming friends among the other polyps, at some of whom his parents had always looked askance, fearing they were by no means well bred. In fact, there was a strong suspicion that some of them, waifs from the disrespectable Shallows district in the hazardous reaches just below the tide mark, had never been bred at all, but were products of budding, a practice frowned on in polite society. However, Junior's appearance and rate of locomotion made it clear he would soon be done with juvenile follies. As Pater repeated with satisfaction, you can't beat biology. As one becomes more and more bottle-shaped, the romantic illusions of youth must inevitably perish. "I've always known there was sound stuff in the youngster," declared Pater expansively. "At least he won't be able to go around with those ragamuffins much longer," breathed Mater thankfully. "What does that young fool think he's doing fiddling around with soapstone?" grumbled Pater, peering critically through the green to try to make out the details of Junior's building. "Doesn't he know it's apt to slip its place in a year or two?" "Look, dear," hissed Mater acidly. "Isn't that the young polyp who was so rude once? I wish she wouldn't keep watching Junior like that. Our northwest neighbors hear positively that she's a child of an only parent." "Never mind," Pater turned to reassure her. "Once Junior is properly rooted, his self-respect will cause him to keep the riffraff at a distance. It's a matter of psychology, my dear. The vertical position makes all the difference in one's thinking." The great day arrived. Laboriously, Junior put a few finishing touches on his construction, which, so far as could be seen from a distance, had turned out decent-looking enough, though it was rather questionably original in design, lower and flatter than was customary. With one more look at his handiwork, Junior turned bottom end down and sank wearily into the finished site. After a minute, he paddled experimentally, but flailing tentacles failed to lift him. He was already rooted, and growing more solidly so by the moment. "Congratulations!" cried the neighbors. Pater and Mater bowed this way and that in acknowledgment. Mater waved a condescending tentacle at the three maiden ants. "I told you so," said Pater triumphantly. "Yes, dear," said Mater meekly. Suddenly there was an outcry of alarm from the dwellers down reef. A wave of dismay swept audibly through all the nearer parts of the colony. Pater and Mater looked around, frozen. Junior had begun to paddle again, but this time in a most peculiar manner, with a rotary twist and sideways scoop which looked awkward, but which he performed so deftly that he must have practiced it. Fixed upright, he was now on the platform he had built, and looked for all the world as if he were trying to swim sideways. "He's gone mad!" squeaked Mater. Gulped Pater. "I'm afraid not." At least, they saw, there was a method to Junior's actions. He went on paddling in the same fashion, and now he and his platform with him were further away than they had been, and growing more remote as they stared. Parts of the home site that was not a home site revolved in some way incomprehensible to eyes that had never seen the like, and the whole affair trundled along, rocking at bumps in the sandy bottom, and squeaking painfully. Nevertheless, it moved. The polyps, watching from the reef, swam out and frolicked after Junior, watching his contrivance go and clattering eager questions, while their parents bawled at them to keep away from that. The three maiden ants shrieked faintly and swooned in one another's tentacles. The colony was shaken as it had not been since the tidal wave. "Come back!" thundered Pater. "You can't do that!" "Come back!" shrilled Mater. "You can't do that!" "Come back!" gabbled the neighbors. "You can't do that!" But Junior was past listening to reason. Junior was on wheels. End of Junior by Robert Abernathy.